All I can do is speak from the heart, so maybe that's where my power lies, I don't know. But I grew up in a community that was, if not true utopia, as close to it as could be, for a time.
The natural system charged itself and punished itself very powerful.
So that was a very difficult time in the history.
Here my poor husband, farmer husband, sitting there with his one lawyer.
/reservoir restoration project.
This is our resettlement plan for you.
Future generations to come.
Abundance of cheap
The
electricity.
lady beside me,
vision.
everyone's grandma,
Build an
plucks at her
economy really
dress,
on a
cherry stained from an afternoon of
As the
pie
water came
making.
up, I guess.
She has never lived anywhere else. I tremble. She takes my hand. I smell the cherry syrup and silently practice unfamiliar words.
All disappeared.
Expropriation, hydroelectric dam,
I can't think of the
until the
city
twilight turns to
that
darkness
better.
and their tail lights become a
They
blur.
burnt, they just
A long
loved
red
burning.
fingernail raking another wheel in another valley.
Awful people.
Hydroelectricity.
40 years later, I still wince at the sight
out
of
down the
black
road of some dust
briefcases
storms.
and powder
There's
blue
a continuing
cars.
legacy of reliable, low-cost power for generations.
One of the first 6 remains that were returned to us happened to be a woman and her infant baby buried together. That remain was carbon dated at 5,000 plus years old. When you think about this land and who we are, the Sinixt people, which actually means Sin means the place of, and Eixt is the fish, bull trout. We're also known as the Lakes people. A lot of what we used as our livelihood was all based on water. Trade happened by water. We had a huge fisheries that we shared with many, many, many people. We became more and more alienated from our landscape and our cultural practices. I would say 90% of that archaeological evidence has been lost. The most contemporary sites would have been along the Arrow Lakes. I find it ironic that the Sinixt people were declared extinct just prior to the signing of the Columbia River Treaty between the U.S. and Canada.
You know, I was a resident with my family in Renata, and you know, it was a fruit-growing community and very close-knit community, and actually, when I look back at it, it was a little paradise.
And had this beautiful smell. I remember the beautiful smell of the soil. You could grow anything without fertilizer or irrigation because it was sub-irrigated.
Yeah, well, like your corn down there, it was about 10 to 15 feet high.
Or you get a little lost in it. Yeah. Gosh.
And we used to have all those things that communities had back then, the Christmas parties with Santa Claus and, you know, the Christmas plays with all the kids. Everybody was involved. That was the thing about our community, is everybody got involved from the youngest to the oldest, and it was just like one big family. That's what I remember most.
This was an unbelievably productive salmon area, from what I've been told, and I've talked with several people who remember the great salmon runs.
All the snakes and frogs disappeared. And there was so many down below. You'd hear them sing, and well, hardly any here now. The fish disappeared, didn't they?
Yeah, it took them a while to come back.
Long time to come back, and I don't think they'll ever be back like it was, so they keep feeding it, I guess.
They diminished a completely and totally renewable resource to the landscape, and the millions and millions of people that those salmon could have fed and continue to feed.
I think that what we had a lot of benefit.
We live in a before dam, after dam culture here in the basin. Before dam, we had a completely different system, and we had a completely different way of living in this basin than after the dams. Dams created reservoirs that changed the way we live and work around those major water bodies.
I think at the time, everything was done as well as it could be done under the circumstances. As I've said before, there's no way to force somebody out of his home and have them be happy about it.
Dams were a key part of W.A.C. Bennett's strategy to build an economy really on the benefits of low-cost power.
I guess environmental values weren't as important then as they are now, and nor was the community engagement, talking to people to find out the needs of the community. That was not as important back then. What was important in the 60s was really building the province and getting a good infrastructure in place.
Some 50% of the hydro requirements in the lower mainland come from the Columbia Basin.
Well, BC Hydro, if you look at the statistics from around North America, we enjoy the third lowest rates on the entire continent.
Of course, the biggest benefit, I think, of the dams is flood control for areas below, like actually Cascar Trail in the Canadian side of the border, and certainly a big benefit for the United States.
These were very large projects when they were built, and many, many people were employed in construction jobs.
There was a lot of clearing to be done.
There are also people employed in the operations of the plants, and those are very good jobs in these communities, well-paying jobs that are long-standing positions in the community, and many of our people are leaders in the community, and we bring that to the Columbia Valley.
One of the things that BC Hydro has done is fund the Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program, and our primary goal is to sustain and enhance the fish and wildlife populations that were affected by the dam construction, and in particular those habitats that remain after dam construction. On the fertilization program side, in Arrow, we started in 1994 with the initial numbers at around 100,000 kokanee. In 1997, after fertilization, we've seen over 1 million kokanee in that system.
And so every year we sign agreements with our counterparts on the American side to help our fish and their fish.
We have to figure out a way to match our growing demand for power with our production of power. That requires conservation and us using more, but it also means maximizing the power generating resources we have in this province to provide what the province needs to fuel its economy.
Because it was a terrible thing to see that water come up over that beautiful valley.
I guess if I could change the course of history, a broader, kinder, gentler approach.
The government of British Columbia firmly supports the intent of the Hydro Authority to negotiate with each claimant in fairness, in sympathy, and in full recognition of the sacrifices that these individuals will be called upon to make in the interests of the people of British Columbia. The destructive powers
A broader, kinder, gentler approach to how we deal with our ecosystems.
Then we should go with care. We should go with sensitivity.
The second dam to be completed under the Columbia River.
We thought, oh, that they won't do that.
Proud day for all British Columbia.
How we approach people and deal with people.
That translates into better decisions.
And then clear.
All the hurt is still there, and they don't want to look at it.
Settlers would have to
Can't underestimate the impact that it had at a personal level on the peoples whose lives were changed.
Indian people do want reconciliation on this landscape.
I've certainly learned an awful lot.
We have to start conserving seriously.
It's just, I think we really have to take a look at all of the impact and develop these projects as best we can, taking everything into account, not just power generation.
Towards the end of this treaty, we have to think, can we conserve more?
I think if we look to the future, that's the most important lesson. Learn from the past.
I think people like me should spend our time trying to enlarge the number of people that get to be in the dialogue.
I guess if I could change the course of history,
But I wonder, do they know that Lavinia loved that window seat? That Georgina picked greengages from that upstairs dormer window? That Jim carved cedar chests on that veranda every summer? All these houses that have stood for generations, a little bit of history in each tiny flake of ash.